Welcome back to E5. This is the Shacknews. It's two more E's than E3. So I think it's excellent electronic entertainment explosive experience. That's five E's.
But
And
what kind of explosive are we talking about? Sorry, I need to know.
like sometimes it's gas,
Okay.
sometimes it's just, in Metroid when you're firing off a rocket. Have you played Knockout City? Have you seen the explosions in that where you pick
Yes.
up your friend and you throw him as a ball? So there's all sorts of explosions here. It's all of those, basically. And then also the fire that was in that trailer. We have a special guest. I feel like it wouldn't be E3-ish or E whatever-ish if I wasn't harassing you. Uh, but we actually decided to get you on here to talk about something interesting instead of just Astroneer for the 18th time. We have the comms lead from SES Dev, Systemera Softworks, and also the co-founder of Latinx Gaming, Joe Tirado. So, welcome, Joe.
See, I thought this was E5 because your first E3, the Shack News's first E3 was it 5 or 6 years ago?
It was 5 years ago. You're right.
So, so I was like, oh, it's E5 because their
It's
first
been
one was the booth was 5 years ago. Show floor, that whole thing. So
Yeah. To give you an idea of like the cinematic universe of Shack News now, basically we declared E3 dead in 2019. We had a proper funeral. It was the end of E3 2019. We had Justin Royal in there. Greg dressed up as Left Shark and jumped over a shark while holding a tablet, a tombstone that said RIP on it. So that was pretty official. So when E3 actually did die, basically last year, we were like, well, crap, I guess this is our chance to move in here and do a new E. So that's when we came up with E4.
got it.
E4 was amazing. If you caught it, we had Ice-T there. So
I
yeah,
did
like
see some of that,
we
yeah.
went big. We were like, we wanted to surprise and delight our fans. We held it those 3 days that E3 was supposed to happen, and we added an E then. At the time, I believe Explosive was the E that we added. So that this year, Excellent was the E that we're adding. So
Got it.
now we're just gonna keep adding E's, Joe. So every year, like even if by some miracle Shack News ever ends up on the show floor again, which I doubt it, we
You're
would
gonna have to hide
be
a lot of comms you've done already, you know?
yeah, it would be E whatever at E3. So I'm future proofing this thing. So yeah, next year is E6, E7, and so forth. But you're here for E5. You make a very good point though that we are exactly 5 years from when we had our first booth at E3. That ragtag bunch. We didn't really have a whole lot of signage. The booth kind of looked like ass. But you know what? It was our booth, damn it. And it was
We made
special.
that booth work. We made
We
that
did.
very special. Yes. And
Like,
and you know what? The live streaming effort we pulled off there, I think was pretty good. All things considered.
it was fun, man. Like, I think we did our best. We had like a VR demo station. Like, that was kind of cool. And it completely would never happen in post-COVID era. But like, hey Joe, do you ever want to put on someone's VR headset at a convention again?
Never.
Yeah, me neither. But back then, we were cool with that, and we were
Yeah.
wiping it down in between usage and stuff. But at this point, yeah, I think the public VR demo is a thing of the past. But yeah,
Just give
like that
everyone a
was
VR headset. It's fine.
but that was like 5 years ago. You're still at Shack News. You were actually behind the scenes of a lot of that. You kind of started your journey in like producing these live events. At that was really the first time I think we did anything like that.
On
With
that
you
scale,
and
for sure.
Andrew and a couple other folks have gone on to do great things. But yeah, we wanted to have you on because I saw that Latinx Gaming was doing something kind of special. Is it later this month? Yeah, so
All throughout the month, basically.
okay, but you're doing a job fair called Conexion, right?
Yes. Yeah, so we like decided that we wanted to, we were kind of seeing a lot of people come to us and say, "Hey, we want to connect with your audience or we want to, place these people of like Latinx descent, or just people like we want more diverse candidates. How do we get them? We were like, here's some ways to do that. Let's make a list. We tried a couple other things, which like kind of worked, but then we just, in our kind of fashion, we were like, let's just do our own thing. Let's just like, if there is a need for this thing, let's like spend our time to just make it happen. And so that's basically how this all came to be. Just like people want to connect with our audience and hire them, and let's just like make an event and connect them together. So
Yeah, and like right now, America's reopening, right? A lot of companies are going back to their offices and stuff. A lot of companies are scaling up, so it seems like perfect timing for this. That people who have maybe had unemployment insurance or whatever, like they're looking for jobs, and at the same time, employers are looking for qualified workers. So it seems like a perfect time for this sort of thing.
yeah, I mean, also just with the advent of the time that we're in right now, a lot of people are saying, well, actually, maybe if you are remote, we will hire you, or if you are in another country, there are ways for us to figure that out if you are the best talent. So I think there's a lot of people now who maybe were sort of bound by geography who aren't anymore, or at least can convince employers to consider hiring them, which is like a huge new part of this thing too, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
No, so like the work from home dynamic has kind of opened the door for a lot of folks. Uh, you know this about Shack. We've always been a virtual office, and we're never gonna force people to live in San Francisco or something crazy. And especially like I think we're seeing it in tech and video games more than ever. Like even at System Era, like I know Adam moved back to Canada, right? Like so there's the fact that with Slack and all these different productivity suites that are all cloud based, like you don't have to physically be in the same office all the time. And I think that it's smart. I'm noticing these really big companies are slower to adopt that than maybe some smaller companies. But it's good to hear that there's video game companies that are open to that. Um, when you talk to companies, or when they talk to you about wanting to improve the diversity of their staff or their employees, how do I put this? Like, does it feel like they're just looking at numbers, or is there a box they're trying to check, or is it more genuine, like they see it and there's like a real motivation to get different voices at the company?
I think most places, there's actually some research out there that says like the more diverse your company, the like more money you make. I mean, there's just this like perspective that you you are going to bring different ideas to the table based on your own life experiences, right? And so like that's the case we make for a lot. Also, like games are as more global than ever, like they are huge. They're like growing exponentially in South America. They're becoming even bigger and bigger there. And that's like a new, not necessarily a new audience, but like it is an audience of people that like game developers aren't always thinking about or spending a lot of time focusing on. And so like no, you can't just like hire an agency to make your game popular or well known or work for people in South America. It's just like, or Mexico, right? It's just like not a thing. So people are, I do think that generally people are open to it because they it's kind of like this situation where they don't necessarily know what they don't know at this point, and so they're open, and they want to bring in those voices. I mean, a good example of this recently was like we did this whole thing with EA, and EA is like putting together all this content for The Sims, and like they ended up polling their internal staff to like figure out things that they were going to do for this like sort of South American themed pack, and like they actually have a pretty diverse staff, and so they were able to just go like, hey everyone, we're sending around this like thing, take some time off from your work and just tell us what you would want to see in this, or and like they were using them to like consult on those things, and like giving them time to away from their like actual job to like help consult on this content to make sure that it was actually like hitting the right way. So I think like there's a lot of benefits for it, and part of what we're trying to do is make sure that people understand those benefits and understand that it's more than just like you mentioned, just like checking a box, because then you could do
I
that.
think you're mentioning South America specifically, like maybe 10-20 years ago, I feel like South American gaming was always legacy. it was always the generation before, because not everyone has a ton of money over there, and a lot of their currencies aren't really that strong compared to the dollar. So, we, for instance, is still kind of big down there compared to Switch, right? And like you could apply that to any console. PS2, right, had a very long life down there.
Sure.
But what we're seeing recently with Brazil, Brazil specifically, there's like a big boom in game devs that are located down there. And I think that's been a secular shift. I don't know if you could speak to that, just seeing game devs actually popping off in, Spanish speaking countries.
Yeah, I mean it's everywhere, right? It's like, especially now, it kind of reminds me of like music in the 2000s, where like all of a sudden the tools become very accessible. So it's like you can just start making music on your laptop. And it's the same thing with video games, right? It's like now that you can just literally go on YouTube and like watch a playlist of people teaching you how to make games in Unreal. And Unreal is basically free up until a certain point. And so like there are all these people who are growing up in the age of the internet and growing up like more technologically advanced, and like things are, it is cheaper to get yourself a PC, it is cheaper to get yourself a nice laptop to build some stuff on. Whereas like you mentioned, the buying power of South America is definitely different.
Mhm.
And years ago, there was probably even a bigger disparity between those things, right? It's like you're not like finding cheap, good performing laptops necessarily all the time. So I think like there's a technological sort of financial part that then has created this generation of people who are really technologically savvy, who understand this stuff, and all they got to do is literally open the internet and download programs, and they can start making games. And so like
And and
it's a
then
really
also,
cool thing.
like, mobile devices, I think, have democratized gaming too. Like,
Yes.
you may be a family that doesn't have a console, but you probably have a smartphone of some
Yeah.
kind, of some version, and there's a lot of games there. And I think that has opened up that world, and we see it in other emerging markets too, like India, Pakistan, like,
Yeah.
all over the world, areas that may not have had uh, the ability to be early adopters are now kind of more, they're faster to adopt than they were before, I think largely due to smartphone tech.
Yes, I mean the mobile market down there is it's definitely a little bit different in the sense that like yeah, mobile's humongous, and it's just
Hmm.
like, and smart people are noticing that and saying, hey, maybe we should hire diverse candidates that understand the area and
Yeah.
understand the social, economical struggles of places like that. And so I think it's when I talk about the sort of benefit financially, right? There's like so many different areas that you could kind of pull that out and say, hey, this person, right? So smartphones, for example, or like you mentioned, mobile gaming, right? Like someone who is just born in the United States who reads Twitter all day, they probably think, PC gaming and console games are the most important markets out there. And there are plenty of people who understand that, like, there's some countries where you can't get a console.
Yeah.
There are some countries where all you do is use your phone, and people don't have PCs, and so that kind of like experience that you can't necessarily, not always learn, or it's just not like there for you to pick up on, is like why you want diverse candidates, why you want people who can bring that information to you and they understand it like implicitly, which is cool.
Hmm. So, for just getting back to like the job opportunities for folks out there, is localization one of those things where there may not have been as much effort making Spanish version of dialogue or even text in a game? Like, is that something you're seeing more opportunities in for folks?
Localization is a good one. I think also just like, also like going even further than that, like writing, like there are
Hmm.
characters that are just coming from other countries. I think we're sometimes it doesn't always hit. The more recent one that comes to mind is the Far Cry situation. It's a little like iffy. There was a little bit like watching the stuff that they showed off, but like I think there are places that are more open now to at least bringing people in who can at least consult and give them a heat check and say, hey, the way he's saying that, that's probably not the right thing, or the way he's portraying this kind of thing,
Hmm.
people wouldn't talk like that. So I think there is a localization part, which I think is probably the most like well-known one and has been for years, because that's like a
Sure.
pretty, like.
But
But
there's
as
almost
far
like
as
another need for like a cultural like advisor. Like,
sure,
hey, like if Cyberpunk 2077, for instance, maybe showed you the game before they showed it to everyone else, you might have been like, hey, that sounds pretty dumb. you know,
yeah,
because some of those voice samples were kind of offensive, especially like 2077, and people still sound like 1990s gang members. Like,
yeah.
there was that.
Which
That
like
was weird. I agree. Like, so it goes beyond just localization. That makes a lot of sense. And I like what you brought up about storytelling, character design. I feel like one of the most successful. I know Miles Morales may be biracial, but he's a hero for multiple cultures. He's a hero for
yep,
me, and I'm not even part of either culture, right? But like, I think just as a brown skinned person, seeing a brown skinned protagonist, it means a lot.
sure.
And that story, talking about what you're talking about, like understanding the culture, in Harlem, and yeah, I really feel like when it's done right in video games, it's a super powerful medium for explaining different cultures to people who may not be. Yeah, I feel like when you're immersed and you're playing as Miles, it's different than like, oh, that character is this race, and
Yes.
that bad guy is this race. It's different when you're living that story through someone.
Yeah, I think that's the most important part, right? It's like if you take or let's just take race out of it for a second and let's just say like different characters and different let's just talk about Mass Effect first, just as a random example.
Hmm.
Uh you don't identify as an Asari, you know? Like you don't know what that's like. But good world building, proper ways of setting those things up, like good effective like design of a character will make you empathize with them, will make you feel more connected to them, and you don't have to be an Asari. You'll never be an Asari, but if you do proper storytelling and you spend time actually building those things out, that's the kind of feelings you can invoke. And I think a lot of people, they look at sort of ethnic and racial differences as ways that like, oh well, people won't be able to connect with them, but meanwhile like people's favorite characters are like orcs, and
Yeah,
like weird obscure made up fantasy creatures. And
like
so
Kirby. What the hell's
yeah,
Kirby?
right, exactly. And so, it's this weird situation where, and I think Miles Morales is a good example of it. It's like
Yeah.
that game's not just for Afro Latinx people from the Bronx or Harlem. That's not
Hmm.
what that game is for.
No.
It is a universal feeling. And actually, there are plenty of people who I'm sure play that game and understand that culture more and feel like they like that. They like understanding, oh, I've never lived in New York City, but like, here's what New York City might feel like. And that's kind of interesting to me. And I want to know more about it. And that's super cool. I think that's like a
Have you
very
played
powerful.
through the game?
Yeah,
And this is a mild spoiler, just
fine.
mild, for folks watching. If you haven't played it, just skip 5 seconds ahead. At the end, or towards the end, where Miles is in that final battle and they kind of help him out or whatever. When they say he's our Spider-Man, I was just like, oh shit.
Yeah.
Like, they put a bow on it. Like, they nailed it. And I don't know, I got emotional from that. Cause like it was such an amazing story. And for them to like put that bow at the end of it, it really made it super special. So I feel like after years, we're finally starting to see some movement in that direction to representation, like either through female protagonists, people of color in games, all
Yeah.
sorts of like, different sexualities being represented in games. Like, I feel like we're getting there. It's just slower than any of us would want, probably. Um, but yeah, it's like I'm curious how long you've been doing this, because this started while you were at SES Dev, right?
Yeah.
How long has Latinx Gaming been going on for?
So it's been a special interest group at the IGDA for a while, and
Hmm.
then like we joined the group. Like when I became a game developer, I was like, oh, I'm gonna join the IGDA. I'm gonna like get involved with the stuff that they're doing, um, and they have some really cool like stuff that's not even like they have special interest groups that you can join that like you can meet other people at GDC, and they have all these online events. But then they also have like um grants for people who are like younger. They have all this stuff. Like they have some really cool programming. But anyway, I got plugged into them, and then I joined the special interest group. And at the same time, a couple other people that I knew, like Christina, I've actually known since the Shacknews days through like a
Mhm.
mutual friend. And so she kind of took it upon herself to like set up a round table at GDC, and like we thought it was gonna literally be like the 10 of us in a room, just kind of like, hey, like what's up? And then like I don't know, it was like 100+ people showed up, and we were
Yeah.
just like not prepared
I
because
think
we don't
it's
even
like
have
low
that kind
key.
of membership.
There were a lot of Latinx individuals in the industry, and
Yes.
like it was like about damn time. And I'm not talking about just devs, like PR,
Yes.
journalists, gamers, and like we all saw it. And, like we were like, hey, that's actually like nice. And I think you had people rally around you. If you're a young person trying to get in this industry, and like you maybe want to volunteer with this group, like how would they go about doing that?
They could just go to latinxgaming.com. There's a mailing list there. You could also just our Discord is just like discord.gg/latinxgames, and that's like the place where we kind of bring everyone together. We have all these separate channels for like all the different kinds of disciplines, but also like if you just want to hang out and like talk to people, it's also a really nice place as well. So I think Discord is one of the biggest places. If you're like younger, I think like professionally, there's all different other groups. Like we have our own LinkedIn page that like connect people through. We have like a lot of stuff like that. But if you're like just kind of dipping your toes in the water, Discord's probably the place to be for sure.
That makes sense. Discord's awesome.
I love it.
I was so happy Microsoft didn't acquire them. No shade, but I wanted
Yeah,
them to keep doing their thing. Like I like Discord the way it is. And,
I do enjoy their entire vibe, and then also just like what they offer to the industry for free. There's a lot of game development teams who are like, we don't use Slack anymore, we just use Discord, and it's free, right? Like
yeah,
that's crazy.
we kind of straddle both platforms, but for voice over internet or video chat, we're using Discord mainly. Some companies still want to use Zoom for some reason, so we do it when we have to. But no, that's great to hear, man. No, I'm super proud of you, man. I don't know if you could tell, like I see everything you're doing. I'm just like, yes, go Joe. But yeah,
Very
it's
much.
been awesome to see you take, like, you know, you could have just taken your game developer money hat and grown more plants behind you hydroponically or whatever, but
Sure,
you
sure.
actually decided to do some good. And I hope that some of the time here at Shack where we were forcing you to eat eggplant for charity had something to do with that.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, I definitely learned a lot about the industry in a really cool environment. Like if I could give, y'all credit, the one thing that I got to do was like be very creative and learn about the industry in a place where like no one was like coming over my back being like this only got this amount of views or like this didn't get enough and you can't be creative anymore. Like get
mhm.
to try all sorts of stuff, and some worked, some didn't.
Yeah.
We had varying levels of success, but like the confidence and the like ability to explore creatively was like really fun. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's huge.
I have a question just about the broad nature of the term Latino, Latina, Latinx. And I know that you've run into this.
Oh, we
Um,
run into it all the time. But go ahead, yeah.
but it's it's a very diverse group of people. And I'm not specifically gonna name a nation or anything, but there are there are cliques. There are, in the Spanish speaking universe, there are cliques, and some cultures are looked down upon within Spanish speaking.
Yes.
The major group, right? How do you handle that? How do you deal with that as someone who's trying to bring people together? And like, for instance, Miles Morales, good example. Technically only half, right? Is that a
Right.
problem? Or like, you know, like if you're half white, is that a problem? Or if you're from Mexico or Guatemala, are you different than someone from Spain or Colombia? Like, because there's so many people who speak Spanish, there's so many countries where Spanish is spoken. Can you just speak to the challenge of trying to unify that base?
Yeah. I mean, it is the single biggest challenge we face as a group. I think The first thing that I would say about that though is like we don't always like our goal isn't to necessarily like homogenize everyone, right? We
Hmm.
want to like we want to create the space for all like if I think about Colombia, like where my family's from, there's so many different subcultures there. There's like the
Yeah.
indigenous, there's like Afro Latinx people, there's like there's just like so much going on there that it's
Hmm.
hard to quantify. The thing we try to do is make sure that it is a space that people can feel like they can express themselves and be themselves, but also come together, right? So there
Yeah.
there is some commonality to the language and the culture that like I think generally people feel. But yeah, it is a struggle because we get people who actively rally against our cause just because like they're not aligned with our political views. We don't really have political views because we're a nonprofit, but like, individually, the word Latin. If I circle back to that, the word Latinx is just supposed to be. It's a term that you use to kind of signify that you are open to the idea that like there's not just two genders, there's not just like kind of breaking that kind of thing down. And
Yeah.
so like we don't police it. I don't walk around saying you said Latino, you must say Latinx. Like none of that. That's all nonsense.
Yeah.
It's just an optional term that people use to kind of like make sure that people feel included. I don't use it all the time. I'll say Latino, I'll say Latina in certain
Hmm.
cases, but like in our official comms, we use Latinx to like let people know that that's the kind of vibe that we're putting out there. And there's a lot of misconceptions and a lot of like it's this weird situation because people see that and they just automatically assume lots of things.
Yeah.
And they use that to kind of like divide people and separate them. And
Yeah,
we
that's unfortunate. Because it comes from a place of accepting people.
yes.
And for that to be used to divide is kind of messed up. I do think that you appeal to a younger demographic because of the brand name and also that philosophy. I think younger people are probably more open to other sexualities or other gender identities than boomers or whatever. So
Sure.
I'm sure you run into that a little bit, but yeah,
But even that, like, I think like the problem that we have is that like we're open to having that discussion with people. I have no
mhm,
problem saying, "Hey, I get that you don't understand this because you're from a different generation, but like let's talk about it and I'll explain to you my perspective on it. I'm not mad at you for not using it, but I want you to know that like this is what this is trying to do."
yeah,
There are a section of people out there though that like they see it as some sort of political statement and they use it to further their own political or whatever views on certain really shitty things.
yeah,
And it's yeah, it's disheartening sometimes. I think like we
I-
try our best to just focus on our work, and
mhm,
like that's the thing that we always roll back to is like if you have a problem with the word, fine, cool. We're
yeah,
not telling you to use anything. We're not trying to colonize. We're not trying to like change the language.
yeah.
Although like technically Spanish is the language of the colonizers who came to, so let's not even go down that route. Um,
It's a slippery slope.
so let's not go there, but just meaning like I think at the end of the day, we are trying to make sure that people from Central and South America get really good jobs, make lots of money, get to realize their creative dreams, and that's like what we want to do. And
Yeah,
so, if you have a problem with that, then I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like, then
yeah, and
then
like
what are we arguing about?
yeah, it's also like you mentioned before, like even just in Colombia, right? Like there are so many different colors of people who all speak the same language and all are of the same culture, or at least of the same country.
Yeah,
That like it's going to be tough. It's like English. Like there's
yeah,
a lot of people who speak English in the world now. And you can't like getting them to unify under one thing is always tough, or not unify, but getting them to like, you know, rally behind a cause. Um I think that the political thing, it goes beyond race, goes beyond culture, goes beyond sexuality. We've seen it in just everything in gaming.
yeah.
The gamer discourse, it just seems fixated on this thing. I know I saw you cringe when I even said gamer discourse, but yeah, the gamer discourse, it so frequently they say keep politics out of my games, and it's like we're people and we're doing things and people have opinions on things. It's like I think especially given the last 4 years, games should have, or at least companies should have some kind of morality behind them, or entities like yours should actually have a moral philosophy that goes beyond, oh no, what if someone thinks we're political? And I think you folks have succeeded with that.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing because, when people talk like that, I mean, think about games that people might point as apolitical or some nonsense like that. Like they have some element of it. Like Halo isn't like necessarily a political statement, but it does talk about the idea of the military and different religions. Like I could dig into that and say, well, the aliens are actually just practicing their religion and they're trying to do their thing, and you're the so like act like politics or political themes don't exist in games is nonsense.
Yeah.
But to draw a line directly to like current politics is also nonsense too, and that's like what people do, right? They try and like create some sort of equal footing as to where those things what they're supposed to directly relate to. And like I've played many video games where my character has unsavory views on certain things, and I've still enjoyed it. I've read many books where the person who's the protagonist or antagonist has like shitty views on things. Max Payne, weird game. I love it, but like, it walks the lines of like certain ideas, and I don't go, I can't learn anything or play that game because it's completely outside of my moral scope. Like, yeah, I'm not gonna bust through windows and shoot a bunch of crackheads.
Yeah.
Like he does in the game, but I still get to like live that experience through him and learn things about it, right? Because he's thinking about his loss of his family and blah 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 blah. So like, it's such a weird space that we live in now, where everyone's trying to create a discourse that separates people, and it's like, it's sad. It's sad that we're in that space.
I think social media has a lot to do with it, but that's a whole other conversation for another panel that we'll have at E6 with Joe Tirado. I'm confirming it right now.
I'll gather some people together. We'll really talk about it.
Our time has come to an end, Joe. I feel like we could talk about this for hours. And I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day. I know you're busy. It's E3 week, and we're busy. Greg's gonna have to edit this video shortly. Get it to Blake, who will then put it into the video mines, and it'll come out. It'll look beautiful. But before you go, just remind the folks where to find out more about Latinx and gaming, how to join, how to participate in the Conexion job fair, all that good stuff.
Yes, so latinxandgaming.com. And then if you want to check out the actual job fair thing, if this is like, that's the evergreen link. The not evergreen link is Conexion, so CONEXION at latinxandgaming.com. I'm sorry, .latinxandgaming.com. That is like the sub-site. So if you want to like sign up for it, or if you want to volunteer your time, we have a bunch of people from like all these amazing companies. I'm looking at the schedule right now. It's like next week we have open office hours with people from Niantic, from Bungie, from Riot, from ArenaNet, from another Riot person, from Activision. And all these people are just donating their time to help you have a really good career fair. We're doing like a pre-event thing, and then we're actually doing the career fair itself. So if you see this in time, conexion.latinxandgaming.com.
They will. This is airing this week, Joe. So they will. That's why we did this. I saw when you guys were doing your thing. I saw when we were doing our thing, and I was like, you know what? Let's help Joe Tirado out one last time.
It probably won't be the last time.
No.
Much appreciated. Yeah, and then the career fair, which is like the week of the 26th of June. Yeah, we got representatives from PlayStation, from the Niantic, from Xbox. Like,
awesome, dude.
Available. So come check us out. If you want to get involved with the community, like I said earlier, discord.gg/Latinx.
Well, Joe, I'm very proud of the work you're doing over there. You show everyone how to do it for Shacknews, even though you're no longer with us. But occasionally we just like tractor beam pull you back in. The Quake Shack battle, you were there, and now this. So we really appreciate you taking the time out. But yeah, we're gonna have to go. I know that there's more awesome content coming up after this. I don't know what it is, so I'm just gonna say it's awesome.
It's amazing. I've seen it all. I know it all.
So thanks everyone. Stay tuned for Shacknews E5 as it continues forever.